Hi, everybody. It's July 3rd, 2025, and this is the weekly Backdrop Dev meeting. We've only got a handful of folks here today, and our topics are pretty light too. Potentially the holidays between Canada Day earlier and Independence Day here in the United States and it's the middle of the summer. A lot of people are on vacation. So, but things are moving as always, even if not everybody is participating. There's always things moving. So let's see, kick things off with a quick intro. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, and I'm the technical lead for the Backdrop project. And I'm joined here by Martin. Martin, can you do an intro?
Yeah, I'm Martin Price, Yorkshire Pudding around the internet, and I'm a backdrop developer in Northeast England.
All right. And just a general state of where things are. So we're mid-release cycle in Backdrop 132. Backdrop 132's feature freeze date is the end of August, or actually September 1st. And yeah, so far we have some pretty modest feature improvements, updating CK Editor, issue 5719 for a better views responsive grid is coming along quite nicely as well. Um, but yeah, there's no real major like leaps forward in 132 as of yet. I was looking at the RTBC queue, the ready to be committed queue, and really I'm way behind. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 RTBC issues. Oh wait, I miscounted. 10 RTBC issues. So my apologies. There's a bunch of stuff that I need to be caught up on. But yeah, that's great that so much activity is happening. Um, yeah, so for general discussion, we had a topic last week about how to deal with abandoned modules, and we're kind of going to pick that back up just to cover what happened in the last week post that discussion. So Indigozella originally filed this as a forum post, and then she opened up this issue after last week's meeting, recapping the problem and incorporating some of the discussion from last week's meeting. Uh, let's see, Izzy's been in here, Martin's been in here as well, and Indigo Solemn. So Martin, okay, so the framing of the problem is just that sometimes there's modules that are obviously obsolete, like if a module has been merged into core or merged into another module, or a module provides extensions to a third-party service and the third-party service doesn't exist anymore. Like these are really clear-cut examples. But then there's other situations where it's like the maintainer has just disappeared or moved on or is unresponsive, or maybe they haven't been updating it for critical PHP or MySQL changes, and so the code just sitting as it is stops working, but it might still provide some kind of usefulness if it were fixed in some way. So there we might need the ability to kind of like temporarily demote a project, for example. And in particular, what we're really concerned about is Project Browser. We don't want people to be able to install modules that break their site from the user interface. Like Project Browser should be maybe not curated, but at least pruned of projects that are potentially going to break your site just by installing them. So Indigo Cell recaps it pretty well here. And I liked your idea, Martin, here. Oh, I'm talking like I'm oh, am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you
I
are.
am. Okay. Uh I thought I was, but I'm missing the little green border that it used to have. So, but I like your idea, Martin, here of like what if we did something in the info file that would indicate the status of a project. But as it was.
We do already have solutions for like projects that are merged into core. There's a special node type on
Mm,
backdropcms.org for those where they'll show up on the modules page but won't show up in the project browser. And then there's a like a description of the module and when it was moved to core. So if you look up something like
mm.
uh,
Like link
We add
or
them into
email.
a
Path Auto,
special function as well, don't we?
Maybe
We
email
add
might
them
not
in.
have been a good choice. What
try
about
Path
Path
Auto.
Auto?
Yeah.
So, where's that flag?
It's a different node type.
A different node type.
Yeah.
Mm.
It seems to
So
still be a
I
project
think
module.
you found a different node. Let me see if I can find an example.
Let me just see.
Add
Project.
content. Oops. It's
Yeah.
called project placeholder is the node type.
Oh. Oh wow. Huh. Yeah, there are a fair number. Some of these are obviously web form Stripe, for example. I wonder what.
That was migrated into web form. So this is basically, so like
Oh.
if you have a machine name of a module that existed on Drupal and you search for that, we're going to give you like an explanation of how to get that same functionality in Backdrop, even if there isn't a module with that machine name anymore.
Okay. Well, that is helpful, but it's not quite the same thing. That this is for like visibility saying what happened to a project that might not exist anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
I see.
And so
So
it's supposed to turn up on the like module search page
hmm.
instead of the project, which should be unpublished and so shouldn't show up on the module search page. I don't know how well this pattern is being followed currently based on the fact that you just found Path Auto there. But this was our solution originally for what are we going to do with all of these modules that people are expecting that aren't there anymore. So I think this is was not originally part of the like what are we going to do with abandoned modules conversation. But I do think it could be a solution for um, deprecated modules.
Yeah, so uh yeah, so okay, so the info file idea is a good one, but um right now, in order for info file changes to have an effect, you need to also create a release. And creating a new release of an abandoned project could just cause
Yeah,
more confusion that like if a
yeah,
project hadn't been updated in 7 years and then one day it gets a new release, people are going to assume that the new release works. Um,
yeah.
but we
The
could
only
start
only
we
way around that would be as if the project browser could would also check, but that would be quite a major change, I think.
I still think the info file is not the right place for
Mm,
stuff that we don't want in the project browser in the first place. Um, but we could try and have project browser include things that aren't projects, um, where, you know, it isn't going to show up as something you can install on your site, but it could be like information,
well, we're
if
not
that makes sense.
well, we want to take stuff out rather than show stuff that isn't
mm,
usable in this scenario.
But you're talking about changing info files, which is stuff that's already in there, right? So that's a different problem. I think you're back onto the
yeah,
like deprecated thing, right? Where so if you have a module that's already in the installer, so like let's take an example of like one that hasn't been updated for PHP 8 or something, right?
Okay.
That was something where I think we would want that to remain there, but the ability to install would disappear, right? Because you don't want to break people's site. Another thing we could do is just remove it entirely, like, if we created a dev release or something, that should pull it from the project browser.
If there's still a recommended release of any kind,
Mm,
then it's gonna show up. What
Can't
what
we
do you
uncheck the box on the recommended release option and leave it with a dev release?
Yeah, okay, so this gets to another part of the whole problem is that how do maintainers or how does somebody that outside of a backdropcms.org administrator do this? And maybe the
We
answer
think
is
this
that
could be Bug Squad, right? Because those are the people who are going to be merging the fixes to these problems too,
but Bug Squad is a GitHub level set of
right?
permissions, not a
But
backdropcms.org level.
if it was like create a dev release, that's something they could do. Um, I don't know what what are like recommended projects, how that works. Because I know on Drupal that used to work with a UI on the project, but I don't think that's the same on Backdrop.
Yeah, it's still not great. So this is not this interface for changing the recommended version if there were multiple is not in any way accessible to project administrators. When they make a new major release, they need to request somebody comes in here and changes it
Yeah.
on
So that could be the
backdropcms.org,
same.
which is not
That
great.
could be the same role for um whoever has that role could do the same thing here for an unsupported because you don't want anyone to just be able to mark anything as unsupported. Um, so
Yeah,
it'd be good if we could have
it would be
that
nice
same.
if the project administrator, but I guess we're talking about an abandoned project where the author
There
probably
isn't one.
isn't
Yeah.
around. Yeah.
mhm.
But this should do something. So like if I un like this, for example, Path Auto should have no
Supported
recommended
releases.
versions, right?
Yeah.
And so just doing that should be the equivalent of like that should take it out of Project Browser because it's not supported
Yeah. Path
in
Auto is
the
maybe not a great example because this whole node is supposed to be unsupported because the other node is supposed to replace it, like the placeholder node.
yeah. There
Um,
should be a placeholder node instead of this one. Yeah.
yeah. I think there might be. I didn't actually check that. Um,
But this actually has other effects, Jen, too, like sites that have Path Auto installed, which according to installation usage here, there is one site out there that's still using Path Auto. Um, Having this node and unchecking this box does something in that it changes update status to say you're running an unsupported module.
I think
And so
that's what we would want though for the Path Auto,
yeah. I'm
right?
just
Yeah.
saying that that for this situation, it's actually kind of important that we not delete this node. You know, like it's important that the project continue to exist on backdropcms.org, and this will take it out of Project Browser. And then we would, in addition, potentially create a placeholder
Mm.
project for Path Auto that does show up in Project Browser just for the point of saying this thing doesn't
So
exist.
maybe then our view for projects should include a search for has supported release on the filter. Um, that might be a good way to.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure because this placeholder is not it's not project enabled. I actually don't think this does show up in Project Browser. Like B
Right. It's
doesn't
not
show up
supposed
in
to.
Project Browser either. Oh, okay.
Right.
So
Right.
that's not for Project Browser. It's just for our
That's for
modules
this module
page.
search. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
In Project Browser, there was supposed to be a distinction between people who are coming to the website to find something versus people who are searching on their own site. People who are coming to the website should be able to find information about things they can't install. Where if you're searching for something to install on your own site, we should not be including things that you cannot install. So there's sort of like two different um, solutions there. So like if someone on their website is like, I'm trying to install Path Auto module and it's not there, they can come to the website and do a search and be like, oh, this is why it's not there. It's not. It was included in Backdrop Core, what have you.
Yeah. There must have been some differences here about like, yeah. about when this stuff happens. Like if we put something into core now, the project page is going to stick around because
It's not supposed to.
but we need it. We need the node to continue to exist for update status for sites that are currently running these contrib projects that stop being contrib projects.
Yeah. So what would happen if we just unrecommend all the releases?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying should happen, is that we should go to releases and do exactly what I just did to Path Auto and uncheck supported to make it so there's no recommended version. And then this in turn should take it out of project browser, but I'm not sure that it does. So yeah, I think that this is the obvious like step here, but it doesn't yeah, it doesn't surface this to, non backdropcms.org admins. And we have an ongoing problem here just with our contrib projects that the edit this page is not accessible to module authors right now, and maybe certain parts of it should be. Instead, what we've been trying to do is, stuff like this info file section, for example, it gets populated by stuff that pulls out of GitHub. So you can put screenshots into your .info file, and then it will populate these fields. And so it's funny, even if we did do this suggestion here of like having a status in the info file, the way that everything in the info file feeds into project browser and everything right now is that everything in the .info file really just populates fields on
Mhm.
the project anyway. And
Mhm.
so regardless of if we decide to support something from GitHub and make it somehow work to make it so that project maintainers can mark stuff as unsupported, ultimately it's going to be populating a field or changing the major release status on backdropcms.org. So our halfway solution to any of these problems is make backdropcms.org have the option that we want, make project browser leverage that, and then eventually maybe also listen to GitHub to make it so that you can control those properties from GitHub. So I guess what I'm saying is like for now, like let's just get backdropcms.org to have the options that we want.
Mhm.
If unchecking supported is not sufficient right now, we should make it sufficient
Mhm.
to remove something from project browser. And then figure out how to make GitHub respect that if we want that to be an option. Yeah, project type. Yeah, we could demote stuff too potentially, or I don't know, maybe another. Oh, there is maintenance status here too, right? Unsupported.
Mm.
So this is another thing, like maybe unsupported should also be uh pulled from project browser,
What do you mean pulled from?
not shown. Like if a project is unsupported, maybe it shouldn't be in project browser.
Ah, okay. Not like the information is removed from the display, but like the project browser does not pull in the project.
Yeah. So for those curious, so the way project browser that listing works, which is backdropcms.org specific, I do believe. I'm going to try to pull this up, but I hope my memory is not faulty here. Inside of our custom modules for backdropcms.org itself, there is PBS, which is Project Browser Server. And inside of here, this is where the query happens for when you do a search, like what content should be returned back out of it. And so this is really quite simple. And that's saying, oh, return, project modules or project themes, join on releases, and then do the search, actually like the keyword search. Yeah, and so I don't, and then it's sorts, I think, by usage.
Will you search
So
this file for supported or
yeah,
unsupported or whatever the key is?
let me see what this field name is.
It's probably like 3 or something, completely not helpful.
Maintenance status.
Nothing.
Yep. Oh. Okay, this function should return an array like this. Okay, so this is actually like the return value, which looks like right now that it's funny. It's like
Empty.
it's ready to return the value here, but it might not have had the field value when this was originally written. It was like, do this later.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have it in here. So not only does it not filter by it, it doesn't
Doesn't
even
return
return it.
it.
So yeah, so if we add that filter there, that would help. But the other one, which is the project releases, it does join on the release table. And so let's see what this one is. So, okay, so this is recommended. Okay, also not taken into account. So yeah, and I think both of these seem like reasonable things for us to filter on. Like if there's no recommended version, or if the maintenance status is unsupported, both of those should be omitted from Project Browser. And so that should be an issue against backdropcms.org. Yeah. Oh, here we go. This would be a great open issue to to build on top of, to file a pull request against. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Do you guys have any other thoughts or ideas around that? I think that might be.
I think that's probably the way to go. Um, just thinking about permissions, we do have we have documented the approach for adding maintainers into the .info file. So we have a if people populate it, we have a way of doing it. It might also incentivize people to populate it. We have a machine way of saying who is the maintainer of this project. We don't have to rely on parsing the README.
Yeah. Yeah, here's an example of that. So we've been changing the .info files. They have so much more capabilities than they did in Drupal. It slips my mind exactly how many things are in there. Because we've got these tags, we've got and maintainers. Yeah, I think I know where you're heading with this, Martin, is that we could use this information to uh grant users more permissions on their projects inside of backdropcms.org. Is that what you're
Mm,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great.
We just don't have that data for most of our backdropcms.org users.
No. As I
Yeah,
say, if it gave you the ability to do the sometimes it's when people change major version of their project, they need someone with the permission to be able to change that. And it's just if filling that in meant that you were suddenly able to sort those things yourself, it
yeah.
might
So we
incentivize
could
people to
just
populate
ask
them.
them because anyone could create a user account and say I'm the maintainer of X module and take it over that way. So what we would need to do is have some kind of
Yeah,
authentication with GitHub,
yeah,
which makes it a little
yeah,
more complicated. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, the GitHub integration would be a little tricky because we need to actually do the full, OAuth over to GitHub, prove that you actually own that GitHub account,
Aha.
and then link it over with your backdropcms.org account. Because I
Yeah.
I think our intention here, I think we talked about this a fair amount when we added this, whether or not we wanted to support other platforms like, GitHub versus backdropcms.org versus some other platform. And I think we just decided to simply say just the GitHub username. Um,
Mm.
but it's a little
Yeah.
ambiguous what
Yeah.
this is right now, whether or not that's the GitHub username or
It is,
backdropcms.org.
if you scroll down, it is described.
GitHub username. Yeah. Yep. Which
I
I
think
what
if we're
which
gonna authenticate against GitHub, we should also just provide a single sign-on option for GitHub. That would be nice.
um I yeah, that might be a side effect, but are you saying that that would just be the way people sign into backdropcms.org?
A way.
A way.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, single sign-on, I really wish that uh we were able to move forward on that a little better. We're kind of slightly at an impasse in that um we don't necessarily agree how it should be implemented, whether it should be entirely backdrop based or leverage a third-party authentication provider or a third-party authentication software. But yeah, that would be nice if it also had the GitHub uh, option. But that's like adding another layer like of
Fourth
to
party.
the problem. Yeah, fourth party.
I guess, you
Hi,
just said
Tim.
something, no, you just said something I'd like to clarify or ask for clarification. We were talking about single sign-on there, and were you saying that there's a disagreement on how to do that best?
That's why
Yeah,
we haven't done it yet. Yeah.
yeah. There's multiple solutions out
Right.
there.
Well, my solution has been less, I mean, I don't know exactly what you mean by disagreement here. I feel like just about anybody I know that has an opinion on this would be happy to see it done any way possible. So
Yeah.
it's not so much that like I don't want you to do it this way, I want you to do it that way, as there just hasn't been consensus, or that, there isn't a sense that we have a solution that we're in a position to implement.
Right. But I think that's
Okay.
because nobody can agree on like there's a lot of options and we haven't like weighed pros and cons. Like our original idea of bakery didn't just work, which we were thinking that would be easy because it would just work. And so if it's not going to be easy, then the question is like, do we want to spend time working on it? Do we want to choose a different solution? And it's been a long time since bakery was like a good idea. There's a lot of other options that have potential considerations. Some of them would require like setting up our own other server where nobody has those skills. One would providing somebody some money, or do we want to spend money on that? One of them would be, do we want to use something standard like GitHub, but maybe not everybody would have a GitHub account. And so is that an issue? So yeah, there's just like a lot of different ways you can do it, but all of them have potential drawbacks and we haven't like actually discussed it. That might be something, Tim, that we could put on an agenda for a future PMC meeting, where maybe we get some feedback from like core developers and other people in the community who've had experience integrating single sign-ons, and see if we can move forward on that. But I think it's just sort of like it became a hard problem, and so the momentum
Right.
stopped. Yeah.
I mean, I
Just
guess I
to
would
say the one
characterize.
that Nate's looking at the moment, I know RG Piano did some work on getting this and got it up and running. I did try with Lando, but I wasn't successful. But I know RG Piano had success doing it. I guess where he was using MAMP, where I guess it's counted as one server, whereas Lando and the like separate them out into multiple servers. So it's a bit harder, but it seemed to work well for RG Piano when he did that.
Yeah, that might also be something to consider too, because we're also in this queue of like, should we change our hosting provider? Right now, all of our sites are running on one MySQL server, one database server, one everything server. But if we were to switch to like a Pantheon or an Amesmo or a Mazy sort of model, they would then all be on different servers. That's like another thing where it's like right now, if we were to implement this tomorrow, it would be one solution, but maybe if we were going to implement it in a year, it might be a different one. Yeah, so something else to maybe put on our list.
Yeah.
Was there one thought of seeing if we could get some sort of open source deal with who Drupal are using?
Yeah. So what they're
I'm not
doing,
sure we like Drupal's solution. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And it might just be
I
their
don't,
provider.
yeah, I don't totally agree. So what they're doing is, I mean, well, there's the challenges of single sign-on, and that if you're not logged in, then you get redirected to the sign-on site, and that just is something that is a requirement of,
Yeah.
single sign-on systems.
But
And
I would
so,
like it that if you are signed on, if it would not keep redirecting you back to the single sign-on site. It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah, there's that's just the lifetime of how long your session lasts, and I
So
think that
like
they
one
just,
second is not long enough, and it just
yeah.
keeps sending you loop, 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 loop,
And
loop,
so
loop.
some people
It's just like,
set that lower. And so, well, what Drupal is running is they're running, so Keycloak is the open source software that is the the single sign-on provider. I think that that's what they call it. Service provider. And so it provides authentication via the standard SAML login method. But the problem with Keycloak is it's Java software, and setting up and running it and running the database and updating it is like maintaining a whole application.
Yeah.
So then there's services that then run Keycloak for you. And what Drupal.org runs is they run, or that they partnered with Cloud IAM to run Keycloak for them. So their database and their usernames and their encrypted passwords are all hosted by Cloud IAM. And so when you log into Drupal.org, you get redirected to accounts.drupal.org. And so this is the sign-on form, but you can see that they've got this little promotion here. And this is when I asked them about it, what they did is they provided like services in kind, basically, where it's like they're getting Cloud IAM is sponsoring this for Drupal for free, so Drupal doesn't pay anything for it, but as payment, they put basically this advertisement on the login form. And there's also, I think, a blog post and a thank you page for exchange for these services. So I think this is a good compromise. I think Keycloak is one of the most popular open source pieces of software to create an identity provider. So you're running open source and then getting the, services exchange from a provider like this so we don't have the maintenance overhead also seems like a great idea. And then we would use Simple SAML connector module on all of our sites that, connects via the standard industry standard APIs for authentication.
Do you think Drupal's problems with the Drupal implementation maybe and nothing to do with the services they're using?
Well, what can you define the problem? It's just that you get signed out more frequently than you want, or
No, it's just that you can't sign in. Like you go to like security.drupal.org and you hit sign in and it takes you to the sign in page and you sign in. And then it takes you to drupal.org and you go back to security.drupal.org and you're not signed in. And then you have to do it again. And then if you are already signed in with Drupal, it like sends you into this loop where it's just like sign in, sign in, sign in, sign in. And you're like, I am signed in, but it like can't acknowledge that you're signed in. I don't know. It's just like there's some like disconnect where if you're not signing in on drupal.org, it can't like it doesn't understand that you are signed in on drupal.org. There's like some like it's not checking something other, it's only checking Drupal. And so it's like you're signed in and it's like, but that's not where I'm signing in. I don't know. There's just
Well,
something that's like really janky.
It sounds like an implementation bug, right? Something is
Yeah. And
not
that could
configured.
be like a security site implementation bug, or it could be just like a Drupal module problem, or I don't know. Like it seems like I don't know if it seems like a provider problem, but I usually just
yeah.
give up and like go to a different browser and sign in a different place because I can't be signed into Drupal.org and a not Drupal.org website in the same browser.
This is interesting, just, because Drupal right now is running both Drupal 10 or maybe 11 and 7 at the same time. So if you're on www, like all of the project pages are, this is Drupal 7. But if you're on the new, like the homepage and some of the top level marketing pages, then you're on Drupal 10.
Drupal.
But yeah, I'm still logged into new Drupal, but I'm not logged into old Drupal at the moment. But let's see, I'm going to log out. So now I'm logged out totally. And maybe this might be a big part of the problem is that Drupal.org is not one website anymore. It's multiple websites. And so it might be what you're experiencing is that you're only logged into one of the two websites.
Right.
Which wouldn't be a problem that we would have because we only have, I
No,
mean,
we
we
have
do,
6 websites. Like it's
yeah,
worse, right?
well, I mean, there's
Was it
big,
Drupal has two, like Drupal.org is
Some
2 websites, but there's also security.drupal. Like they've got a lot of other
yeah,
sites too.
but I'm saying there's a big difference in that on Drupal.org, you're constantly navigating between old and new in a way that's like we know that the forum and the doc site, like they have different homepages and different content versus Drupal.org is like it's all mixed together right now. And so
Well, we have a lot of navigation on our sites that navigate them back and forth. Like backedupcms.org has a lot of links that go to the forum site, the doc site, the whatever site. And as soon as we deploy our new banner, every single one of our sites are going to be linking back to backedupcms.org. So we're going to be creating that same sort of environment where people are going to be changing from one site to the other constantly without realizing it. And so it would be really nice if their like authentication could even if you're not signed in, if you click signed in, if it would be able to like recognize that you were signed in somewhere else without, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying that yeah, that would be nice because you're already signed into the account site. It's like,
Yeah,
when you sign into Google, you don't need to separately type in your
sign in for
password
Gmail
every
because you
time you
signed
go
into
to Gmail or calendar.
exactly.
It knows that you're signed in and so it signs you into all of them.
Yeah,
So right now I'm signed into Drupal 7. I'm not signed into Drupal
new Drupal.
10 or 11. And so when I click login, we'll see what happens. Okay, there you go. So it didn't
That would be
make,
better. I would love it if it could do that all the time.
yeah.
Maybe only Drupal 11 can do that, and that's why the security site in Drupal aren't able to do that. Like, I don't know. It just seems like there's something in it that's like
Right.
super janky and doesn't always work.
Yeah, but yeah, I think like Tim said, it's implementation.
Yeah. That is one advantage we have is that all of our sites are running the same version of Backdrop. So
Yes. I I don't know if this again is a distraction, but again, like the blocker for single sign-on for us, in my opinion, is not that there are different camps on which solution we do. There are different ideas out there, and as soon as I think anybody stepped forward and said, "I'm behind this system and I have the resources to implement it," I'm pretty confident we would all jump to that solution.
yeah.
Right? What we want is
But
a
if we but
solution
if
that
for
somebody
example
with the skills to implement is
could
behind,
do.
right? Could do, right? If there's nobody behind it that can implement it, it's kind of worthless. And so therefore we're struggling around looking for, well, what would the solution be that we can actually get implemented?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that, for the problem we're talking about right now, like would not be solved by the single sign-on solution, right? But then we would have to add an additional fourth party
Sure.
authentication
Yeah.
in order to do that. So there's also like,
Yes.
maybe that's just the world we're going to live in. We're going to have fourth party. We're eventually going to have fifth party. Like who knows, right? But yeah, I don't know.
I would probably push back a little bit there, Tim, that if somebody came forward and wanted to implement like the SSO module, which requires a shared database, I would probably be like,
Okay.
no, like
Okay.
we're not going to use like an ancient hack, to make it so that SSO works.
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, I
But
do, but I do agree that if somebody were to implement a SAML based approach where it's like they built out a Drupal SAML identity provider, or they used Keycloak, or they used simple IAM, if they're using any of, as long as they're using the industry standard authentication mechanisms right now, I don't think the service provider matters as long as we have the ability to maintain it. So I think you're right about that aspect, that there's definitely a lot of choices there that if one were completed, then we would probably just go with that one.
sure. I mean, I would sort of argue that right now, the assumption for the most part is that you or Jen are the only two that have the skills, resources, and access to solve this. And so it doesn't, like, if you were happy with the solution, everybody else would be happy, right? But if somebody else were to come and say, "Oh, I've got this other solution," and it isn't something that you would like, that, yeah, then we might have to debate that. And we might be sort of on that. So is the module that Irina worked on recently, is that something you disapprove of, Nate? Or if somebody were able to,
Is that
I forget. So she's been working on the single sign-on solution for some of her sites, and she's released a module for Backdrop. And it's unclear. And again, I don't think Irina cares what the solution is for single sign-on, but she has one now that she's worked on. So she's like, if we could implement that, that would be great. But that's not her saying that this is a better solution than other ones. It's her saying this is the one
this
I
one
know.
works? Yeah.
This one I
And it
know
works.
works because I've done
Yeah.
it. So
I think
Uh,
hers, it might have been a generic one, Nate, but it integrates with Stanford's user management system on their end. And if that's SAML,
It probably is then.
yeah,
Yeah.
we could probably leverage that somehow. But we would then need the provider for the data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they like Stanford probably, if it is Keycloak or something, they have their own Java server with their own Java maintenance staff who are able to maintain the identity database separately from all of the websites that are integrating with it.
is this it? IDAP_SSO.
Sounds likely.
Looking at it right now. No, I don't think it is because this is Attila Vasas is the maintainer of this one. And this one's old. This is 5 years old, but It must have got a commit recently. Yeah, it did. Okay, so I think that's not Irina's, that's something else that I know nothing about. I'm just going,
And
OpenID Connect. I think that's the one.
sounds-
yeah, that would be good. Um,
Yeah, that's the one Irina seems to be working on. Okay, it doesn't have a release yet. But I think she's got it working. She's got a big note saying it's experimental and untested. Do not put on production. But I think it's working. I think it's working for her, and she hasn't done a release yet.
yeah. Oh, well, all of this was regarding GitHub authentication, right? That's how we actually accidentally got onto single
Right.
sign-on problem again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's good to talk about, right? Especially if it's something that, it's a reminder, a good reminder that this is a thorn in our side, and it would be good to, not
Yeah.
forget about it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
I
was helpful
see
to talk through this.
either an email or a
Nate, you're
Zulip
muted
message.
somehow.
Oh. Am I muted?
No, I can't hear you.
We can see your lips moving, but
Mhm.
Oh,
No,
I heard
him.
everybody else can hear me, apparently.
Yeah,
you
I can
can.
hear you.
Oh, maybe it's me.
I hear
Can
it.
someone else say something?
Yeah.
I'm talking. Could you hear
We're
me?
we're all
It's me.
we're all
Okay, hold on.
talking.
I can hear everyone.
It's me.
Well, now I've lost my train of thought there. I can't even remember what we were talking about.
I can hear you again. We were talking about the project module issues.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Going back to that, so I came in late, and to be honest, I was catching up on a lot of what you guys were talking about. Did the other very related issue that has come up recently is making unreleased modules more discoverable, which there has been discussion at, and maybe you talked about this today, but I didn't hear it.
No.
Which is the idea that we recently had somebody in the forum complaining because they had discarded, they had came to Backdrop, looked for a particular module on backdrop.org, not found it, sort of said, okay, well, Backdrop doesn't work for me. Several months later, they came back, they looked a little deeper and found there was an unreleased version of the module they were looking for. And if they had known about it, it would have saved them several months of time. And this, I've heard this story many times, including run into it myself. And we have talked about this, and there has been an idea that we have some way of actually showing unreleased modules on backdrop.org without a button, like they're unsupported at this time, but at least you know they exist, so that if you're interested, you can then pursue them. And I don't know if we have a consensus that that's a good solution, but I've heard a lot of positive thoughts about that solution. And I just want to surface that because I think fixing these things together could be possible. I don't think that solves the undiscovered, that other problem completely, but it's like the one thing
Yeah. So we're talking about a new project that's been ported. It exists on GitHub.
Yes,
but it doesn't on backdropcms.org. We don't want it in the project browser because it's not released yet, but we do want it on backdropcms.org because it's kind of been ported and it might work. But we want to just show it as being no available releases yet.
Right.
So that could be, so unfortunately, the way our GitHub integration works is it only gets added to backdropcms.org when there's a release created. But we could have some other tool that creates something that's not a release node on backdropcms.org, because what it does right now, it creates a release node and then it creates a release if there isn't one already. But if we had something else that just use the GitHub API to pull all of the projects that don't have releases and created like a placeholder node or something like that, that could, with some default copy that's like, this module isn't ready for prime time yet, but here's a link to progress happening on GitHub or something like that. That could be a really good way to just get results in the search result page without providing the module in a state that's not safe.
Yeah, but this could be useful for other reasons too, that we could just listen for the repository created or repository transferred event and then make the node on backdropcms.org at that point rather than waiting for the release to be created. I do like the way that it uses releases to do things like the README, for example. I think also only gets updated on releases and not on every.
That's not true. You can update the README outside of releases, and it will get pulled.
Oh, really?
It gets pulled on a relatively regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, never
I
mind
think
then.
it might have originally been on creation and we changed that at some point since then. But I do think if we were creating,
Yeah, that's good actually. That means that people have the ability to update their project page even if it hasn't been released yet.
yeah. Or a new release hasn't been released yet. Project page exist. What was I gonna say? Oh, so if we started doing more with projects that don't have releases, which right now don't really exist on backdropcms.org, that would also give us more flexibility with what we could do with like project module and the views results and all of this, supported versus unsupported releases stuff too.
Yeah.
That could be.
Yeah, because that's exactly I mean, Project Browser, as we looked earlier, is showing every project on backdropcms.org right now. And that was fine when every project that was created had a release and was supported, right? But now we're moving this world of like projects that may have existed for a while and they're not good anymore, and they do already exist on backdropcms.org. And so this is all intertwined, that if we start respecting the maintenance status, and if there's no stable releases, no recommended releases, that will reduce the amount of stuff that's in Project Browser, but then we can start increasing the amount that's on backdropcms.org by starting to create project nodes when the project repository is created right away, but flag the status as, doesn't have a recommended release yet. That all sounds like a really good compromise. Like start showing less in Project Browser, start showing more on backdropcms.org, and start using that maintenance status and recommended releases as indicators of how ready a project is. Yeah, I like it. All right. Well, we're over time for today. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. This kind of turned into a riveting conversation about module maintenance. And yeah, we've got some issues. The ops issue or backdrop community issue 44 to discuss a little bit more. And then we have the backdropcms.org issue 464 to take it offline or take it online. Okay. Any last thoughts before we close? Will there be a community meeting today, Tim? Or
if it's just Martin and I don't think so.
Okay.
All
right.
John's sticking around yet.
Okay, well, we'll close and
Yeah.
yeah,
We'll see who
and we
shows
can
up.